Working on budgeting tonight. That's a bad word for a lot of people, but boo, boo. So important to do, but I know it's kind of a bad weekend with the Veterans Day. I know a lot of people are gone. I kind of some of the younger people are gone that I wish were here, but we'll jump in here. They can watch it later if they want to. But let's pray. Father, we thank you that you have given us the stewardship of your funds, your money. And I know this is often a testing ground of our own faithfulness to you. And Lord, you want us to use the funds you give us in ways that honor you, and we pray that we can. And I believe that part of that is learning how to handle it in a way that is best. And so I pray our class is helpful with that, and as we look at budgeting tonight, that we'll be able to look into this carefully. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so like I said, we're going to look at budgeting tonight. We've already handled two subjects, and if you're behind on that, I can give you the handouts. But the two different subjects, well, the two different subjects are gathering information, which you need to gather your information and figure that out. So if you have your finances spread out all over the place and you don't know what you have and you really haven't got a good handle on it, or on the other hand, maybe you do know what's going on, but if you would drop dead tomorrow, would your family know what you have and where to find it and so forth? So at the last funeral, I asked the funeral directors to bring me some booklets that for everybody to be that you can have all your information on to keep it available for your family. So we have a bunch of those I'm going to give out later on, and those are very, very helpful. But so you're supposed to gather your information, go through your information and find that. And then the second thing was setting your goals. What are your goals? Short term, next month or so, middle term, 6 months, and long term, such as retirement or maybe a house or a different house or car down the road or college education, whatever your longer term goals might be. So those are the things you're supposed to have been working on. And I sent you home with some sheets to which I don't even want to ask how many of you did them, but these are sheets you're supposed to put on your refrigerator and write down everything you spent for a month. And it's been about a month since we had our last class. So how much are you spending on all the miscellaneous stuff? Not your car insurance or utilities or mortgage, but things like your lattes and your eating out, money you're spending on the kids or the grandkids or buying new socks or whatever else you're spending money on that's kind of off the budget, okay? So that's the only way you're going to figure out how much you're actually spending in reality, because most people do not know how much they spend. They have no idea, and most of the people underestimate how much they spend. And so you're probably in that category. So if you haven't done that yet, let me encourage you to put that thing on your refrigerator or someplace handy and write every day at the end of the day, write down how much you spent. And don't cheat. Don't be real good for 1 month and then go back to your old habits. What are you really spending money on a regular basis? That'll help you a great deal. Then when you have that together, then you're ready to start thinking about budgeting, this nasty B word that we'll look at here that people hate. And yet it's very important that we do this. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why develop a budget? Why is this important? Well, here's 4 different reasons we would mention. One, to determine where money currently is being spent. So that kind of goes back to what I just said. Most people really don't know where their money is going. Now, really, I was talking about your everyday spending money, but I have counseled with dozens and dozens of people that have no idea how much they're spending in a given month for their everyday expense, their living expenses. They don't know what they're spending on utilities. They really don't know what their mortgage is. They don't know what their taxes for their real estate is. They don't know these basic things. Their debt, credit cards, whatever else. They don't know that. And I often give the illustration of a young couple I dealt with years ago, probably 25 years old. They were in great financial trouble. Both of them were working, but they couldn't pay their bills. So I had them do a budget. I had them figure out what they're spending their money on. And when they came in with their information, they were spending, this was years ago, they were spending $400 or $500 more a month than they were bringing in, and had no idea they were doing it. They couldn't understand why they were in such financial doo-doo. It's a Greek word, I think, and but they were, but they didn't know it. They didn't know why. And these were both college educated young people with good jobs, but they were in deep trouble financially because they did not know what they were spending. So if you don't know what you're spending, you need to figure that out. I'm going to give you a budget sheet tonight to help you with that, but it doesn't do you any good if you don't apply it. It's kind of like reading the Bible. We can talk all day long here about how important it is to read the Bible. If you don't read it, it doesn't do you any good. Okay, number 2, decide where to spend money in the future. So a budget helps you know what your future ideas are. And that goes back to last time we talked about goals. So where do you want to put money in the future? So if you, for example, if you want to have a new car in 2 years, what are you doing to plan for that new car? Okay, are you going to be able to pay for that car? And we're going to encourage you as we get around to spending in a week or two, that you eventually, if maybe not right now, but eventually you pay cash for your cars. Because buying cars on credit is one of the worst things you can probably do. Secondly, to credit cards, which is the absolute worst. Gambling is the worst. All right? And honestly, there's a lot of Christian people get in gambling trouble. Because, you go down to the grocery store or wherever, they've got gambling places everywhere in town, and just drop a few bucks here and there. Next thing you know, you're spending $50 to $100 a month on tickets and whatever else to do. I don't even know how to do it. I need to figure it out. Maybe I'll do it sometime. And they don't even know what they're losing on it. So decide where you want to spend money. Budgeting is a system where you control your money instead of your money controlling you. Number 3, learn to live on less than available income. This is hard for people to do. I'm going to give you a little mantra later on. I thought I had it this week, but I don't. If you will spend less than what you make for a long period of time, you will be financially successful. That's it. Just don't spend all you make, and do it for a long period of time, and put it where you ought to put it. We'll talk about investing later. Then you will be almost certainly, with few exceptions, financially stable, financially successful. So very simple stuff, but most people don't want to do this. They do not want to live on less than they bring in. It's painful for them. They want to spend. People love to spend, and yet if they do not control it, they'll never go anywhere financially. And then fourth, to take control of your financial future beginning now. So if you're not doing well with your finances now, you've got to come up with a plan so that isn't always the case. So we had at one time a young couple in our church who had come to us years ago who are in deep financial trouble. And they also were financially college educated, had good jobs, but they were in deep trouble. They decided they didn't want to live like that any longer. And so they took a strong position of budgeting and controlling their income and their expenses, and they dug out of that in time and went on to do very, very well. But they had developed bad habits early in life, and that's where a lot of these bad habits start. They start in college, and that age bracket, and this snowball. And they had done that, and they had gotten in really bad trouble. But they did dig out, went on to do well. It can be done. So whatever your situation is now, we want to move on in the future to control that, and we'll begin tonight. Here's a definition for budgeting. A budget is a systematic plan. Now there you are again, nasty words. Systematic plan for managing your money during a given period of time. So budgets are going to change. Matter of fact, as we'll see in a moment, every year your budget will probably change. But for now, here is how we're going to handle our money and spend it. And the more realistic it is, the easier it will be for you to follow. So I say that for this reason. It's kind of like a diet. Okay, you stepped on the scales this morning and you're 20 pounds heavier than you thought. Somehow that all crept up on you, right? And you didn't even know it happened. So you step on there, and what do you say? Okay, I'm going to lose weight. Okay? Yeah, oops, I'm gonna lose weight. Now I have a relative who does this all the time. She sees she's overweight. I'm going to lose weight. What does she do? She goes on a starvation diet. She stops eating. I mean, just stops. And she has awful health issues these days as she's gotten older because that is no way to actually control your diet. But that's what she's done all of her life. She'll lose 10 pounds, 15 pounds, and then she can't stand it anymore and she gains it all back and some more. That's dieting. And that's the very same thing happened with money in the life of a lot of people. We're going to go on this strict budget. We're never going to eat out again. We're never going to buy any more clothes. We're not going to do anything until we get all this. And it doesn't work. You can't live like that. You know, you got to have stuff. So you have to have a realistic understanding of how to do this and something you can follow. Then the last sentence, a budget would help you take control of your finances to ensure enjoyment of the things you value most. And I want to keep encouraging you that this is a Christian financial course. So one of the things that you ought to value most is the ability to give to the Lord's work and to help others. It ought to be your goal. If you can't do that now, if you're 20, 25 years old or 30 or whatever, if you can't do that now, you ought to be when you're 50 or 60 or whatever, that you have an abundance of resources, if the Lord allows, that you can share with other people in need, and you can fund good, excellent Christian ministries. I have found personally one of the greatest joys of my life, being a little older now, deep into my 40s, that I really enjoy being able to give lots more money than I ever thought I could. That is a great joy to do. And so that ought to be one of the goals that you have as you look into your budgeting. Okay, so those are preliminary, why it's important and what it is. Any questions on that before we look at how to develop a budget? Okay, let's start looking at how to do this. So what are we going to do? There's three basic principles for a budget. Number one, money has to be pre-allocated. That means you control your money. It doesn't control you. So you don't spend money unless you have a plan on how to spend it. So that means is knee-jerking, just jumping on something that looks good on the internet or one of those TV programs that sells stuff 24/7. You don't do that unless that's in your budget. Now, if you want to budget wasting money on something off TV, then you've got a budget for it. But you don't knee-jerk. You don't just up and say, oh boy, that looks cool. I think I'll buy some of that. So it's pre-allocated. You know where it's going. You've already got a plan ahead of time. Number two, spending stops when the money's gone. That's painful, isn't it? Now, we'll talk about the envelope system, probably this week a little bit and more in the future. Now, the old envelope system, let me remind you, for maybe a few of you that don't remember, the old envelope system was an ancient system in which you actually put money in envelopes. And so maybe you had 5 envelopes, maybe you had 20 envelopes, depending on your needs. And each envelope was marked for something. One was groceries, one was utilities, one was insurance, one was clothing, one was stuff for the kids going to school, whatever. And all these envelopes. And you pre-allocated how much money you were going to spend each month on those particular items. We'll look at how to do that in a moment. And you actually put physical dollars in those envelopes. And so you had that money available. So it was real easy if you had an envelope that had that money. And my mother did this all the time, so I watched her system. And she would have this, once that grocery money was gone, there was no more groceries bought for that week or that month, whatever that system was set up. That meant you were out of grocery money. You're going to have to go to the cupboard and find noodles or something to eat for the next 3 days, but you're not going to spend any more money till you put more money in the envelope. The danger there, or the thing what ruined that a lot of times, was we robbed from other envelopes. Okay, so I have $100 in my clothing envelope that I'm not going to need this month. I'm going to take 50 of that and put it in my grocery thing. I'll pay back later, but you don't pay back later. You know, that's what gets you in trouble. So the envelope system is when the money is gone, it's gone, and you don't spend it. Now we'll talk about what happens if an emergency shows up later. You have an emergency fund for emergencies, but that's a different thing. We'll look at it later. Everybody needs an emergency fund. And by the way, just to get you primed, your emergency fund should be at least 3 months of your living expenses, maybe 6, depending on your life, but at least 3 months. So if you need $3,000 to live on a regular week, a month, which is kind of low depending on your life, but if you need 3,000, then you need 3,000. Then you need six. I mean, I'm great at math right now. You need $9,000 in an emergency fund, at least, and probably 18 or 20,000 in an emergency fund. That means if the transmission on your car goes out, you don't have to borrow to fix it. If your roof suddenly blows up, you got the money to pay for it. Okay, so that's what an emergency fund is for. But this is everyday living expenses, and this works for you. Now, most people today don't use physical envelopes and physical money, although you might start that way. It might be a good way to start and learn. But most people use a computer program of one kind or the other, and that's what I need to look up. Is somebody using that kind of a program right now, envelope system program? I know Priscilla uses one. Nobody's using that. So I'll find out from her what she uses. So that basically you put this money electronically in your accounts, and you follow the same system. Okay? So anyway, that's that part. Now the last one, the last principle is current awareness of financial situation is necessary. You need to know where you are at any given moment. So you need to know what's in your bank account. You need to know what your bills are that are coming up. We'll talk about that a little bit. Most of us now, if you have money in a bank, which I guess most people have a checking account or something, there are apps where you can look at it every day, 10 times a day if you have to. Look in that app and see how much money is there. So you don't have to be blindsided. Well, I don't have the money to pay for this bill. I know what I've got in my checking account. So you're aware of your financial, and you're also, and this is the bigger deal, you're aware of what is coming up next to pay for. That a bill is coming due, and when it's coming due, and how much it's going to be. So that can be a monthly bill. Where people get caught is on the bills that come due that aren't regular. So that can be a number of things. If you pay your car insurance every 6 months, and you hadn't planned ahead for that, okay? Are you paying your real estate tax? You're not escrowing your account, and you pay it out personally, and suddenly you get a bill for $2,000 to $4,000 that you weren't ready for. And the third area is for any of you that are self-employed or have some self-employed income, and you need to be paying quarterly taxes to the government, and you weren't ready for it, didn't plan for it. A lot of ministers and missionaries who pay, they're self-employed to a certain extent, and they pay quarterly their taxes and Social Security. And then I don't know how many pastors I've been involved with. The first year, they didn't plan. And they thought, my goodness, look at all this money I've got. And then they they do their taxes, they owe $4,000 to Uncle Sam, and they haven't saved a dime. That has happened more times than I can count among ministers and missionaries that first year. Even though I warn them, you got this money going, you better send in $1,000 a quarter. So often it doesn't happen. I mean, honestly, just even recently, I've seen that happen. So those are the kind of things that catch us. Things we're not planning for, aren't looking at happening. Jim?
Yeah, what would you do about utility bills that are variables? Say going from May to June, when the air conditioner bill doubles, or October to November when the heating bill goes up. How do you handle those kinds of things?
Well, that's exactly the same. So if you've been living in your house very long, you know what's going to happen down the line. You know what's coming. So you plan accordingly. So you have money set aside for that if it doubles or goes higher than that. So you're not surprised at what you hit. If it's your first house, if you've never done that before, you might want to check the utility bills of the people before you. And if it's summertime, you just sweat. You know, people used to sweat. It was okay. Joe?
I just mentioned, when we bought our house, to figure out what the utilities might be, I just called the utility office.
Yeah.
And they give you what the average was the last 12 months, they'll do that for you.
Yeah. And the utility companies will also give you a level amount
Yeah, they can do that.
if you want them to.
But I think you have to do it through, you have to be paying for so long, you can't do it right after you open the account
Okay.
for the utility.
But if you really want to do that, so you have a level plan all along with $200 a month, and so they'll do that for you. I don't personally like that because they always seem to charge me more than I want to pay, but you can do that. I saw a hand somewhere.
Well, that's what I was going to mention,
Yeah.
the equalizer
Yeah.
program with the utilities. And if you do overpay, then you get no bill. That just happened to him this month.
Okay,
He got a bill and it said, you don't owe us anything.
well, that's good to hear.
That was very nice to hear.
Nice month. Yeah, Scott?
With self-employment or other income, another thing is penalties. So you might
Yep.
be surprised how much you gotta pay, but then the government tax penalties on top.
Because you didn't pay.
Yes,
Yeah. So you get a 10% tax on top of the tax.
you get a double whammy.
Yeah, yeah. So anybody that has a second business, a side business that's making reasonable money, make sure you understand, talk to your accountant, talk to a tax person, make sure you're paying your bills, your taxes. Because Uncle Sam is not one of those guys that will look the other way, all right? You know, actually, you can, I think, maybe you know this, Jim, but I think if you go bankrupt, and you can get rid of all these bills you owe, you can't do that to IRS, I don't think. Do you know? I think they're gonna stick you anyway.
There's bankruptcy protection, but the debt itself doesn't ever go away.
Okay, so you can have like a period of time to pay it off?
They can mark it not collectible, but for example, if 10 years down the line you get a refund, they can.
They're gonna take it? Okay. Okay. So don't think you're gonna escape taxes. Death and taxes are still inevitable, right? That's what they say. Okay, so that's how we are gonna develop this plan. So let's start talking then about how you can actually put it in place. In order to begin to put a budget in place, you must take 3 steps. So you ready? Number 1, estimate your living expenses. So you need, and this is what I gave you last time, and also gave you a net worth thing. I'm going to give you the budget sheet in just a moment, but you estimate how much money it costs you to live right now. Now, if you don't have a lot right now, if you're young, and maybe all you pay is car payment or insurance, a little bit of food and stuff, you might not be not a whole lot. But as you get older, have more obligations, that changes. So that's why the budget changes all the time, depending on your circumstances. Okay, so you estimate your living expenses, so that means you look at what your obligations for the month, and also this, what I talked about earlier, this every day expenses that you're spending on things you don't even realize you're spending on, the coffees out, the lunches with your friends, the travel to visit somebody in St. Louis, whatever you're spending money on, vacations. You need to have a good handle on your actual living expenses. And once again, this amazes me, very few people have a good handle on what they're spending. If you do, I think you're in the minority. Very few people know. They just know the money came in, and I paid the bill, and I'm okay. You know, as long as they make the monthly payment, and that's no way to handle finances. And on top of that, a lot of people buy things because they can make the monthly payment, whether or not they need it or not. So you need to know what your living expenses are. Number 2, record what is actually being spent. So we're going to do that on a monthly basis here in a moment, and we gave you the sheet for your everyday expenses. You need to really know what it is that you're spending money on. And then 3, establish a reasonable budget. And that's what we're going to start to work on right now. Questions on that or thoughts? So far, so good. Okay, let's look at this. I'm calling this a Christian financial budget because Christians have different priorities than unbelievers. And so we're going to have to learn how to control our budget. Now, I want to mention this. As you control the budget, you need to have some system. We're gonna give you a system where you keep track of what you're spending and what you think you're gonna spend. I would recommend that you put it in your computer or paper form, whatever, how much you're actually spending this month on different things and for the next 6 months, so you really know. And then evaluate and revise. So after a month or two of your spending, go take a look at it, see if you're on target, revise your budget as needed. It will take you a couple hours a year to revise your budget, look it over. I always do this every January the 1st. So I got nothing to do on January the 1st except sit around and eat pie. So I sit down and look at my stuff, I lay it all out, I see where I've been and how well I did the year before and what I need to adjust for next year, and I make any adjustments I need to make. And I'll give you the chart in a minute of one of the things I do. And then about ever so often, 20 minutes a week, probably, you need to look at what you're doing and see if you're on target. So it doesn't take a lot of time if you just invest a bit in that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pass out, first of all, a budget worksheet. So I got 50 copies. I think that'll be plenty, and most couples can take one. So I'll start it out over here, and you guys can have it over here. You can have, I think we're probably about 50 people in here, so there's probably enough for everybody. If you want an individual one. And it wouldn't be a bad idea if you want to, since I think there is enough here. You might want to take two. If you're a couple, you might want to take two because you'll scribble all over one and be mad, and you need to have a nice clean one. So feel free to do that. Yeah.
This is also helpful budget when you, at the end of years with your taxes too.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that information at your fingertips when you're getting that together.
Did everybody get a copy?
They're coming.
They're still coming back there? Okay. There's still some back where, going in the back row. If anybody didn't get one back there, just feel free to grab one. Did you get one, Luke? There you go. Yeah, what Scott just mentioned is good. If you'll keep tabs of what you're spending in a computer program or physically, but I use a computer program that's probably 20 years old. I was told 10 years ago by Richard Nix, when he was still here, that this program is obsolete and you need to get rid of it. I'm still using it. So I figure it's going to last me till I go to the home. And so far so good. Got one left. Anybody need one? There's a bunch back there? Okay. Okay, so this computer program, every month, I go back in and I enter into the program what I've spent on things that are important. Not every dime of every time I bought a pair of socks, something that type of thing, but all my expenses. And the computer program divvies it up according to categories. When I come down to my tax time, I don't go looking for hours or for papers and receipts. It's all in the computer. I poke a button, the reports come out. I know exactly how much I spent on my house. I know what I spent on giving. I know what I spent on taxes. I know, and it's all done, bam. And so I have it all printed out, ready to go, and then I can do my taxes. I'm often amazed, and I don't know you, so don't take it personal. I'm often amazed how many people come down to April the 13th and then decide that I need to get that shoebox out of the drawer somewhere and go through all these receipts that I've been working on all these months, and I have no idea what I've spent. It's so nice, so much better just to spend 1 hour a month. That's about what it takes me, 1 hour a month to put this in the computer, poke the button on when I'm getting ready to do my taxes, and it's ready to go. So I'm ready to do my taxes by Groundhog Day. That's my favorite holiday, so I might as well do my taxes on it. Scott?
It saves you money too, because the accountant usually bills you on the time they spend on it.
Yeah, if you give them a shoebox worth of receipts,
Right.
you're gonna be in trouble.
But if you have a
Yeah,
concise,
yeah.
a list that they can use that's
Yeah,
gonna help
yeah,
them.
he doesn't want your receipts usually, he wants your
Right.
breakdown. Yeah, so if you have an accountant, that's fine. If you don't have an accountant, I don't have an accountant. I just pay my bills, and 3 months later, the IRS says you messed it up, and here's how much you actually owe. So I just wait for them to get back with me. I'm kind of kidding, not entirely. I'm always surprised. Sometimes I get money back. Sometimes I didn't do it. But anyway, here we are. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So what? And you need to go home and do this. All right. So let's start off. So let's start off with your salaries. So how much what's your salaries? This budget has both, if you're married, your spouse is a salary as well. How much are you bringing in? If you have Social Security, if you're one of those older folks, and Trump said he's going to stop taxing Social Security. Isn't that great? And then our kids will be absolutely broke. But who cares? Who cares? As long as it's good for me and us older folks, we don't care about you young people. If it goes bankrupt, that's just too bad, right? Now, that's another discussion, all right? Okay, if you're in the military and have some veteran benefits or whatever, just anything you got coming in, pensions, retirement plans, interest income, alimony, if you have that, I hope you don't. If you have a real estate property, you have some rent, your dividends, unemployment or foods, anything, royalties. So you wrote a book and you're making millions of dollars on your book. Now, all that is included. So anything you're making goes down on this sheet of paper. Okay, monthly income. Yeah.
What about gift cards? What do you do with that? Like, if someone gives you a gift card that you can't really turn into cash, you can only spend it on like at a certain store. Do you put that in your budget?
No, I wouldn't. I'd just use it.
It's free.
Let's go out to eat. Yeah. I'd go to Cracker Barrel, get it over with, you know?
How big of a gift cards are you getting?
Huh?
I said, how big of a gift card is he getting?
I don't know. Couple $1,000 gift card?
I found a $50 Cracker Barrel gift card once.
I went looking for that. Where'd you find that? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I would just consider that a windfall and spend it, but this is actual income, take-home income. So you got a lot of things here. If you have anything else, add that too as well, okay? Any questions on that? So how do you know how much you got coming in? Again, I'm just always amazed when I talk to people and they don't know how much their income is. Yeah.
What'd you do for I was a server for a while, and so I could always kind of guesstimate how much I would get, but I never knew for sure. Like one shift I could get $300 and the
Yeah.
next would be 75.
Right.
So it was hard to.
Yeah, that's where you're going to have to kind of, over a period of 6 months or so, average. I said my average monthly deal is this amount, and kind of go with that. Yeah. Yeah, some people's income is varied. People have, some people like a farmer, for example, would have big income this time, but nothing for several months. So, yeah, it's a good question. Okay, anything on income? So anything, but you got to go sit down and do it. Okay, look at the stubs you get from work or whatever. If you don't know what your Social Security is, if you're in Social Security, you should know that. They change that every year, so get all that down. Okay, anything else? Okay, let's look then, after that, we get that totaled up. What's your payments per month? Okay, so now we got a whole bunch of stuff. I just got some stuff on the overhead here. But look at the very long list of things down there in the left-hand column of things where you might be spending money. So I've got down here, because as a Christian budget, I went too far, sorry. And this is just a thing, but is my humble opinion, and I think I'm okay, that our first priority is to the Lord's work, and then our obligation is to our taxes. We don't have any choice. So we should figure out, honestly, right off the top, every year when we're planning our budget, how much we're gonna give to the Lord's work. Okay, if you wait until you've paid all your bills and you got something left over you give to the Lord's work, very few people will give much because we'll spend it. But if we start out by saying, I'm going to give X number of dollars or a percentage, the word tithe is here. I don't, as you know, if you've been around this church, I don't believe that tithing is incumbent upon Christians today as a 10% tax in the Old Testament. That actually was, there was 3 tithes. It came up to 23.5%, and that was taxes for the Jewish people. If you go back and look at the tithing, all that money went to run the government and the temple and so forth. So it wasn't free will giving. Free will giving was what the people did after they paid their tithes. And that's Old Testament as well. Jim?
Question that comes up a lot on the Dave Ramsey show is, are they giving off the gross or off the net?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think on here, on one of these sheets I'll give you, it says the gross. I don't know who comes up with that. You can decide what you want to do, but what are you going to give? What do you think you should give? Harold?
Which one do you want to be most blessed with?
You know, the pastor that I grew up with all my years would say that all the time. He wants your gross blessed or your net. And it always acts like we're supposed to want the gross blessed, but I don't know why. I don't care how much the gross is. I want to know how much I'm taking home. So, can you explain that to me? No? Okay. But you should know how much you want to give. So,
I just heard that too.
yeah, you hear it? But how much can you give? How much do you want to give to the Lord's work? So every year as I do this, I examine mine. And my goal is to raise my income, my giving every year. Okay, a little bit sometimes a little more depending on the income. And so I try to give more every year. And percentage-wise, the percentage grows. I don't go and say I'm going to give 10% or 20% or whatever. It just grows over time. But my goal is, and God allows, I will give more every year. But I give first. That's number one. The taxes, I don't have any choice on. I've got to pay my taxes. And so the giving, this is the top. This is before you even look at a budget. These are the things that we should be looking at. So people often ask me, well, how much should I give? And I guess according to how much the Lord has blessed you with. According to 1 Corinthians, you're to give as you've been prospered. As the Lord has prospered you, you should be willing to give according to that principle. There's other principles as well. So how much, I don't know. Years ago, I remember Jim liking my plan where I try to give as much as my mortgage is. That was my starting point. So if my mortgage was $1,000, then I wanted to give $1,000 to the Lord's work because I felt that was only right, only fair. Then when I paid off my house, then I quit giving. I don't give anymore. So that was just the beginning. You might have another criteria, totally different criteria, but start with a plan and try to grow that as time goes on. Okay, so that to me, let's say I'm making this up. Let's say you're paying 10% taxes, 10% giving, 20% of your income is already designated. So now you're going to live off the other 80%. That's what your budget is going to be based on. This is top priority.
Do you have any wisdom on like what's like sort of giving to prioritize? Like I'm trying to figure out like the balance of like giving to church like here at Southern View and then like missionaries individually.
Yeah.
Like how do you balance like knowing what to prioritize? Would you like prioritize giving to church first and then other additional stuff?
Yeah, my own personal view is that we ought to give majority to the church that we're a part of. But that doesn't mean that we can't give to other individuals as well and mission works. Really, it's up to your own convictions on it. I do think that it's short-sighted to be giving most of your money to mission work, people or other organizations outside the church. I think the church is where your home is. These are the people that are going to be with you when you need them. They're the people that are going to bury you when you die. These are people who are going to love you through whatever. And so there ought to be, I think, a priority there. But on mine, honestly on mine, I give, we have a large mission budget here at the church. So most of my mission money goes through the budget of the church. But I do support 2 or 3 missionaries individually. and that, I don't have any problem with that, but the bulk goes to the church. That's my opinion. Jim?
I think the biggest, for me anyway, the biggest thing is to do that first,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think a lot of times people fall into a trap of, I'll give at the end.
Yes,
And that's a real way to set yourself up for not having money to give to the Lord's work.
that's right. And I like what Jim just said, I've done all my life. I've never run out of money. You know, I never come to the end of the month and I just can't pay my bills. Now, if that comes to that place, then I might have to make some temporary changes, but the Lord has always provided. Right?
I was gonna say, for the Christian, when you talk about spending less than you make, that's after the giving. You still
Yes,
need to spend
after
less
the
than you
giving.
make after the giving.
Yeah. Now, well, I'll give this one caveat. So often people will come to me who are financially strapped. They're not paying their bills already. Okay, but then they listen to Dave Ramsey or one of these other guys, and they believe they have to tithe. Does Dave Ramsey teach that? Or is that I know Larry Burkett and all those guys used to. Yeah.
He makes the statement a lot that even when he was bankrupt, he tithed all the way back up to where he is now. Even when he had nothing, he still tithed.
Okay. Now, the caveat I would make on that is if you can't pay your bills, you're cheating somebody else. You shouldn't be giving money to the church when you're not paying your bills. You owe somebody money, you pay your money. But it should be your goal, if you're in that kind of situation, to get out of that as soon as possible so you can make this a priority. That would be my opinion on that. Okay, let's move on. Let's take a look at that. You can see all sorts of things to put money into. On the right-hand column, money secured debts. So these are things that you have to pay. You're obligated to pay these things. Auto loans, for example, all sorts of other things. Secured debts and loans, those are things such as, they're secured by some kind of commodity. But then the next one is credit card. Notice how many are listed here. Sadly, there's a lot of people that have all sorts of credit cards and they're filled. So again, when people get in financial trouble, almost always it's credit card problems. Credit cards are charging 27% or so. So if you're paying the minimum payment on a credit card, you will never get out of debt. You'll be there the rest of your life. So credit cards, it should be paid off at the end of every month. You should never pay a dime for interest. If you're in a situation where you can't change, where you have to right now, make it your priority to get out of it as soon as possible. Now, Dave Ramsey, I believe, teaches that you should pay off your lowest, which are the lowest on the credit card with the lowest amount to pay it off first. His reasoning is that that will give you an incentive to pay off others. So you pay it off as quick as possible, then you move to the next one, to the next one. I don't know if that's the only way to do it. Personally, I would pay off the one with the highest interest rate. Yeah, Jerry?
They call that the snowball effect.
Snowball. Yeah, so that'll work for you, but if I'm paying 27% on this card and 12% on this card, I'm gonna pay off the 27%. That's just my opinion, but at any rate, you pay them off as soon as you can. Dan?
He also says not to use credit cards if you possibly can.
Yes,
Because it's easier to spend with the credit card than it is with actual money.
it is, and studies have shown that you actually use a credit card or even a debit card versus cash, you'll spend more money. You'll spend quite a bit more money because it doesn't hurt you at the time. You don't feel it. But if you have to put out the money, you feel it, or a check, you feel it. So I think Dave Ramsey's pretty much against all credit cards, pretty much. And that isn't a bad deal. But now he can pay straight up for anything with all his money. So if you're going to fly on an airplane, you're going to have a credit card. If you want to rent a car, you're going to have a credit card. So credit card, you need to have at least one hanging around somewhere, but you don't have to be spending on it all the time. Okay, the monthly unsecured debt, all those things, personal loans, those are loans you owe some friend that was dumb enough to give you $1,000, and that's a good way to lose a friend, by the way. Medical bills and so forth. A summary of your budget, the total take-home income versus your living, so you add it all up. And now you know what you have left over to live on. Yeah,
I wanted to ask a question about the monthly living expenses.
okay?
So things like, there are several things that they're not monthly expenses necessarily, and so how would we calculate this amount?
Okay, I don't know if I have a chart here or not. I think I do. Hang on a second. I don't know why I did it this way, but here we go. Well, what have I done to myself? Okay. I'll come back to this card thing later, but, okay. I guess I don't have it after all that work. So the thing to do on that is figure out how much it's going to be, you're going to spend yearly on this particular thing and divide it by 12. And that, what was your question? That's your question? Yeah.
How do you figure out what you're gonna spend yearly?
Well, sometimes you don't know, but if you're going with a car payment, of course you know what that is. If you have a credit card thing, you kind of know what that's going to be, and so forth. So you just kind of figure out what you're going to. And it might, if you're early on, you may not know it at first, but you start figuring that out in time. So these things that go up and down, you just divide it by 12. Okay. Now, the second thing we're going to give you right here is another sheet. So we'll work on this. This is a budget worksheet. There you go. There's that side. Let me have one. While these are being passed out, look at this little chart up here. So if you're trying to figure out how much money you're going to need for certain things, this is a suggested starting point. Okay? Suggested starting point of where you should spend. So housing, for example, 33% is, that's pretty close to the highest level you're supposed to spend for housing. Okay? Food, 15, auto, 15. These are starting points to look at. Do you have the money to do such and such? So you might want to look at that. It might be helpful. Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on there's so many things that you can talk about in those, but the housing one, a typical habit of people is to buy the most house that they can. Do you have any ideas on that or what?
Yeah, does everybody have one of these? Anybody need one? More back there, thank you. So if you go to buy a house, you're looking for a house, and you go and go to the bank, they will tell you you can have up to 33% of your income, something like that. And they'll factor in some things in that. But then they'll tell you, here's how much of a house you could buy. And usually it's way over what you need. So I got a thing the other day on the mail, I could buy $1 million house. Okay, Marcia, I didn't tell Marcia about that. Okay, so how stupid would it be for me to do something like that? So just because you can, on paper, buy a much more expensive house doesn't mean you should. The issue on that is what do you need? What do you need for your family? What do you need for entertainment, for the Lord's work? Some of you might need a bigger house than others, but you need to look at what you really need for the Lord's glory and not worry too much about the limit. But they will give you a limit. They'll give you something you can't strap you for years if you're not careful. So be very careful not to buy into that. And if you're going to look for a house, just a little piece of information. If you want to buy a house for $150,000 and you start out by looking at $400,000 houses, you are going to be really disappointed when you get back to the 150s, and you're going to have a hard time adjusting. Don't do that. Don't go there. Start with the houses you can afford.
I think also, if you get a bigger house, it's gonna have more expenses.
Yes, it is.
Sometimes we forget that.
You have more taxes, more repair, everything, yes. So keep that in mind. Good point. Okay, let's look at this. This is something I do on paper. You can put it in your computer, do it that way. Why I like it on paper is that I put down at the first of the year how much on all these months, on each of these, and more. You can add any categories you want on this. This is just as it's suggested. what am I gonna have to pay in January for mortgage, my giving, my taxes, my auto insurance, whatever. And then I go through on this chart and I X off all the times that particular month I don't pay that bill. So for example, in my case, when it comes to taxes, I pay 4 times a year. So January, I pay a hunk of money, but I don't pay in February and March. So I X off February and March. But then in April, I've got a big hunk of money I gotta put out again, so I put down that amount of money right there on that chart. And I know at a glance, just looking at this chart, I know at a glance that in 3 months, I'm gonna have to put out several $1,000s in taxes. Okay, or maybe my car insurance, something like that. And I know which months I've got these things to do. Other months I have not so much. So some of my months are really expensive, and some are not much. So I keep track of this. And whenever I pay a bill, and this is more helpful than I can tell you, and I'm pretty organized, but we occasionally can't remember if we paid a bill. Okay, like we just got the thing this week on the garbage. We got our garbage bill comes 4 times a year, and we could not. It wasn't checked off. So we did we pay our garbage bill? Well, they stopped picking up our garbage. Well, I have to put it in the dumpster at church like everybody else is doing right now. You know? By the way, don't do that, okay? Some people are. But anyway, so did we pay? Well, if we mark it off, we know we paid and it's done. It's very, very helpful. We found out that we organized it with them to take it out of our bank every 4 months. We didn't even remember doing it. So that's how bad I get. So anyhow, so you mark it off, and every week, every month, you know when you paid your bills. And you have this at a glance. Now you can put it on your computer. Computers are great, probably more efficient. But if you don't open up your computer and take a look, you won't know. But if you have this in a little folder in a drawer that you look at on a regular basis, you pull it out. Did we pay the utilities this month? Yes. No. Well, we know. It's extremely handy. And this also, and this is what you want to be doing this month, this is your homework this week. You go through there and you add up every month these are your big bills, not your spending cash. You add up every month what your bills are going to be. Okay? And then you know what that is for each month. Then you have an idea of how much money you got left over. Now there's another issue that is not on here, but is pertinent to a number of you, and that is student loans. If you have a student loan payment that's due every month or whatever, yeah, it's on here. So you know you don't have extra money to spend if you've got these bills to pay. And this becomes extremely handy in our life anyway. So we just and to me, and now I'm weird, I know that, but I get a perverted joy out of checking off my payments. There are times when I just go in and check off just to feel good, just because I know I can. All right? But I want to know I paid the bills. I want to know what they're due. I want to know how much they're going to be. I want to know how much I'm going to have each month. And this is extremely helpful to do that. And notice on our list, I think, you have at the very top, here's a mortgage thing, but after that, the Lord and taxes. So once again, priority. What's your priority? Okay, so you could buy a $500,000 house, but that would mean you couldn't give to the Lord's work. So you don't have that income. You've already decided you're going to give X number of dollars to the Lord's work. You already know what your taxes are. Now you're starting to get a handle on how much of a house you can buy if you're looking for a house, or what kind of car you can buy, or how many cars, that type of thing. You're starting to get a handle on those things because you actually know what's coming in and what's going out, and you've got a control over your financial world that most people don't have, quite honestly. They just don't have it. Okay, questions and thoughts here?
Utilities on that, one's supposed to, there's 2 on gas, is one supposed to be water and something?
Yeah, probably. Or electric. Yeah, I don't know why that's there. I was just thinking about the gas stove they're going to make me get rid of one of these days is bothering me so much, I guess. Yeah, Scott?
What's your thought about auto pay? I'm not comfortable doing that, but
Well, again, your goal ought to be to buy a car ultimately without a payment.
no, I mean auto pay.
Oh,
Bills each month.
I think it's a plan. I think it's a wonderful plan. You have it immediately taken out of your checking account. You never touch it. You never miss a bill. It's always there. And I'm moving all my stuff to auto pay as quickly as I can. I don't want to write checks and worry about this. I want it taken out. And if you're worried about the government knowing what you're doing, they already know. So don't worry about it. Okay? And plus, you don't count. You're not big enough. If you're Elon Musk, they're watching you real closely. But yeah, Judy?
You know, it's very, I don't wanna say disturbing necessarily, but how many elderly or seniors are still paying mortgages?
I read a percentage of that recently. It's kind of staggering. Do you know, Jim?
I don't know the percentage, but I know it's a big problem.
I think it's somewhere in the 40% range. That people are now retired.
I thought it was higher than that,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought that's what I read recently.
but it's still a
So one of the goals you should have on our goal sheet last time. So if you're getting a little older and you're headed towards retirement, you ought to be rid of a mortgage. Don't go into a retirement with a mortgage. That is absolute disaster waiting to happen.
Well, they're wanting, you know, I mean, it's like they almost want bigger houses, you know? I mean, instead of scaling down, they buy them to go up.
That's because the kids moved out and they could finally afford to buy a house. You know? Yeah. Probably not the best choice, but
Yeah, but I love it when you said they come back in and then they go to the basement and eat their cereal.
when they come to visit or they come to live with you again. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
if
think-
you have like inconsistent medical expenses, like it's not like monthly you're going to
Yeah.
the doctor, do you take that out of your emergency fund? Or do you just monthly budget it so that when medical expenses come?
I think if you're thinking about you're going to have, let's say dental, for example, and you're going to have other medical things you think are coming up, I would budget for it. I put away $50 a month, stick it in my imaginary envelope, and build up on it. But if you get to a situation where you have to pay, you know, let's say you get really sick, or the hospital got a $3,000 deductible, you don't have money sitting around necessarily, but if you have an emergency fund, you can pay it and not get stuck with that. Now, medical bills are a little differently. There's more freedom. They can't stick it to you as quickly, but you can. A lot of people are in bad trouble over medical payments, and it's not their fault. A lot of times, it just happened. But yeah, plan for that. Yeah, Jim.
Medical bills are so unpredictable, you don't know,
Yeah.
when they're gonna arise, but, I've not done this myself, but I've heard a lot about it, the medical savings account where you put a set amount in each month and it's tax deferred and so forth, and then you withdraw from that to pay your medical bills. But that's something that would be predictable, like you set aside $50 or $100 a month in that medical savings account, and it never disappears if you don't use it for 3 years, it's still there for that use.
It's kind of doing what Bethany, I just mentioned to Bethany, you're putting away $50 a month or $100
Right.
for
But I mean, that's
something
something you
later.
can easily budget for,
Yeah.
I set up a medical savings account, put $100 a month in it, and there's your budget,
Mm-hmm.
that item right there.
There you go. Yep. Yep. Mike?
I was gonna say, along those lines though, the tax benefit, the tax deferred part of that, you have to be in a qualifying healthcare plan.
Yeah,
order to
so,
get that.
so it's not, I'm not sure if individuals can even do that. Do you know, Jim?
So there's a couple of different medical plans for different work situations. A lot of companies will have a FSA or a cafeteria plan, you might have heard it called. Those dollars have to be spent at the end of the year or else you lose them.
Right.
The other participants in the plan benefit from that and you actually contribute to them. So what I think Jim's talking about is the health savings account and HSA, where those are never taxed. You're not taxed on what you put in or when you spend it, as long as you're spending it for medical care. But those are typically only at certain corporations.
Yeah.
Not everyone has the access to that. So I think this would, in my opinion, save for it. If you know you're gonna have to have some
Yeah.
crown work done or something, or a potential surgery, just put that in here.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, so like Jim, who is not working for somebody right now, could not set up his own HSA
I
program.
believe that's true.
Yeah, so you, but you can set up your own account. You can put your own money away.
Treat it like a Christmas fund or.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah, you remember the old Christmas funds at the bank? People put money, why didn't they just save it on their own? Because they didn't know, they couldn't. But if they did it every month, put it away every month, it added up. Yeah, Jeff?
We could have more than one savings account if you can put in two savings accounts, and one for something and one for something else.
You can do that. You can, or at least keep it on your books, on the computer, that you have this money here for different things. Okay, homework. Everybody loves homework, right? So you got 2 sheets. So you need to go home and you need to go through both sheets and come back next time with with knowing what you're doing, what you need to know. These are filled out and you know what's coming up for next year. Okay, so try to do that for next time, and that'll be a big help towards our next issue, which is, I think, spending. So you can't spend it if you don't know you have it. That's, at least you shouldn't. At least you shouldn't. So, okay, we'll let you go.